everyone. Thank you so much for hosting all of these wonderful people that you see sitting here in front of you. And thank you to the Strand for hosting us. It's a lovely space, and we're super excited to be here. I'd like to first welcome K.Y. Robinson to read from her book, The Chaos of Longing.
Hi. Okay. Hello? Okay. The first poem I'm going to read is Manic Depression. It's about my struggles with bipolar disorder. One moment life is more pigmented than technicolor. Glitter flows through my veins, and the stars in my eyes dilate and burst into delusions. Minutes, hours, or days later, shades of blue and black surround me like smoke. The glitter morphs into shards of glass and taunts every breath that I take. The next poem is Open Season. I am afraid to have a child. I am afraid that their black body will be considered an unholy land. The bass or sass in their voice will be heard as a war cry, that the sun will pack up and leave their eyes. I am afraid that there's nothing I can do or say to relieve the burden of blackness. Okay. Oh, thanks. Okay, the next poem is Dear Future Lover. It's a self-love poem. Dear future lover, teach me how to love without running with my eyes shut. Teach me how to love without feeling hollow hearts until I become a shell of myself. Teach me how to love without becoming a landmine on the inside. Teach me that love is not war, but peacetime in your eyes. The next poem I'm going to read is from the longing section. It's very sensual poems. Hunger. Your appetite for me is seasonal. My longing for you is relentless. The next poem is Poetry 2. I can already smell and taste the ways you'll hurt me. Stay away from me, or you'll become my next muse. Oh, thanks, guys. Next poem is Elements. I search for water in your mouth, fire in your eyes, earth on your body, and wind when you whisper in my ear. This poem is Unrequited Love. I wrote it for this guy that didn't love me back. Damn you. Okay. Unrequited love. Unrequited love is like kneeling on uncooked rice and waiting for the boiling water of their kisses to soften the pain, but they never come. They only peer through the window out of pity, indifference, or contempt, while you're trying to crawl out of a poem that they never wanted you to write. This next one is Heavy. This is dedicated to all the men who thought I was too fat. Okay. He doesn't say it, but I can tell. I am too heavy for him. My emotions, my expectations, this body, the unsaid words that hover between us. He only wants my heavy when it's hot and pouring all over him, when it's stretched across his bed like continents and doing all the things that he likes. And then I began to feel every ocean form between us. He's on his next expedition to a land that isn't so dark, needy, and heavy. The next poem is Self-Sabotage. It's a poem about healing. Healing requires every cell in your body, but I'm so used to dealing with myself in fragments. Sometimes I lift a scab to revisit the pink flesh of pain to feel more alive. I don't know who I am without this bitter harvest of pain. Would I know what peace looked like if it gently knocked on my heart? Would I open the door or pretend that I wasn't home? This will be the last poem. This is Elements 2. There's a universe swirling inside of you. You have to learn to be your own earth, wind, fire, and water. You are a natural phenomenon, not a natural disaster.
That was awesome. So I don't know if you know this, and I don't know if she wants me to tell you, but that was her first reading, and you did amazing. Very impressed. Yeah. So next, I'd like to invite Trista Mateer to the podium to read from her book, Honeybee.
Hi. So I thought I could walk away from love and it would let me. I thought distance might feel less like pulling on a rubber band until it snaps back, but take a look at this. See all the red on me? I've been staring at your letter for 2 days. Opened it at the kitchen table, didn't even start crying until the third read-through. It doesn't sound anything like you. Or it does, and I just don't want it to. Does it make it better if I understand the anger, just not what you buried it in? Does it make it better if I miss you, even after reading that? I wrote you more poems than anyone else I ever kissed. I still held your hand after you broke my heart. You told me that love meant giving and giving and giving, but at some point, all the plants drown. You never told me that part. We outgrew each other in angry, uncoordinated ways, and I am sorry for that. If it helps, my chest still hurts when I think about your hands. If it helps, I'm not sure I even know how to let you go. You said, most days I pity you more than I love you. I just love you. How I asked you to stay. I turned myself inside out over the phone, read you the words etched on my bones, and I hoped for once they might settle your heart instead of speeding it up. And I know I have a heart like a wild thing with snapping jaws and matted fur, but I'd hang up my hands on hooks for you, pluck out all of my sharp teeth for the chance to be easy. I said I'd never write another poem about you, but everything is a metaphor for the way that we left each other. Birds flying south for the winter, rivers running to the sea, the moon stuck struggling in its orbit and never really going anywhere at all. The other day, a coworker asked me how you've been, and I thought that he was joking. It took me a full minute to put it together. I've gotten so good about not flinching at the sound of your name that people don't know I'd still throw myself mouth open into the ocean for the chance to drown somewhere you might see it. The smell of your hair puts my stomach in knots. I want to lay roses at your feet. I want to pray at the church of your hands. I want to thank you for every awful thing you ever did to me. No one will ever be able to knock the wind out of me again. Not like that. Not like you. A letter to my first love. Look, I'm not sorry you weren't the first person I kissed. Everybody needs a little practice to get it right. I still don't think I was ever ready for you. I'm not sorry you weren't the first person I kissed, but I wish I'd met you on the playground. I wish we'd held hands when we were too small for people to make a big deal out of hand holding. I wish I could have kissed you under the slide, pressed you down in the mulch, surrounded by the sounds of hand games and hopscotch. Look, I'm not saying I'm still in love with you or anything, but things can be important even though they're not important in the same way anymore. You still occupy space inside of me somewhere. I'm not still in love with you or anything, but sometimes when I hear a certain song or drive past my high school, I feel like I'm 16 years old in a homecoming dress and we're laughing about boys over our watered-down punch. I feel your head slipping down onto my exposed shoulder, and I still don't want to move. Look, I want you to know this doesn't change anything. Do you think moons really love the planets they circle around? Like in that poem we used to read to each other? I've been thinking, maybe they're just stuck. Maybe they don't know how to let go either. Maybe gravitational pull is just code for, I don't know how to be away from you, but on like a massive scale. Like, baby, I know we don't work together. I just forget how to be a moon when you're not around. I forget how to be a moon when you're not around, but I'm getting the hang of it. I'm working it out.
Oh, Trista, wow. So I'm allowed to be very proud of this book because it's under the Central Avenue imprint, which I own and run, and this just came out a couple weeks ago to critical acclaim, to immense love from readers, and I'm super proud of it. It's an epic poem and verse. It's this story. It's wonderful. Thank you, Trista. You're up, Cyrus Parker.
Get it.
What's up? Suspicion held my tongue hostage, crushing it in its sandpaper grip until I quenched its thirst for knowledge. I dug through the mud until I struck water, and it pulled me under, filling my lungs until my chest burned with realization. I ripped myself from the water's grasp and heaved myself onto your front doorstep, where on your welcome mat I threw up all the truth that I had no choice but to swallow, and somehow drowning was my fault. You spent the entire summer in my basement, folding multicolored squares into the shapes of cranes and puffy little stars. It was endearing, I have to admit, to watch you meticulously make each fold, constructing something so intricate from something so simple. But it's so sad, isn't it? To know that no matter how much time you put into creating something beautiful, it only takes a moment to break it back down, fold by fold, to squeeze each star between your fingertips until its light flickers and dies, to pick each crane up by its wings and pull them apart until the tension becomes too much and it tears in two. A dog is loyal to its owner without question. It will protect them against any threat, will give love unconditionally and grant forgiveness automatically, for that is the nature of a dog. They never see the bad in someone, and that is why I stayed. That is why I let you kick me in the ribs over and over and over until you finally got bored, tied me to the post outside of the Greyhound station, and left me in the winter's cold. Nothing more than a stray. "Where are you headed?" the woman in front of me asked, as we stood in line waiting to move on to our next destination. It was the smallest of gestures, but it's one that will never leave me. She didn't know my story, why I was here, or where I was coming from, but she cared enough to ignore my swollen eyes and tear-stained cheeks. She cared enough to wonder where this bleeding heart was going. We might have been two nameless, faceless strangers, two ships passing in the night, but she showed me a kindness that I was all but ready to give up on. Please know, I'm not writing these poems to dig up all the bodies buried beneath the flower bed and line them up next to all the skeletons in the closet. This is me cleaning out the attic filled with all the things that I hid away from prying eyes, so I can maintain some semblance of a person who had their shit together. This is me unpacking all the overstuffed boxes and sweeping away all the cobwebs in the corners. This is me airing out the lingering stench of all the things I didn't say, wouldn't say, couldn't say, should have said. In every book I read, I see you. I see you in every heroine who isn't afraid to stand up and say whatever's on her mind. I see you in every heroine who wears the term unlikable like a badge of honor. I see you in every heroine who's had to endure the unimaginable, yet still finds the strength to fight another day. I see you in every heroine who's had to carry a revolution she never asked to be a part of in the first place. You are the strongest person. Thank you. Oops, okay. It's easy to turn the hurt into poetry. Hurt is ugly. It doesn't need to be wrapped in a bow or buried beneath a bed of roses. But turning the good into poetry is much more difficult. Capturing the way you glance at me out of the corner of your eye when you know I'm gazing at you as if seeing an autumn sunset for the first time, or the way your legs get tangled with mine underneath the table at our favorite coffee shop as we spill our hearts into Word documents, or how our pinkies interlocking as we walk in the park has more meaning than if we reached into the sky and wrote our names amongst the stars. No, turning the good into poetry is much more difficult because these moments are already poetic, and putting them into words is like translating from one language to another, and something always gets lost in translation. You are living, breathing poetry. And I have one more piece. It's not from DROPKICKromance. It's actually from my second collection that will be coming out about a year from now, which will be titled Dropkick Masquerade. And this one is called The Alchemy of Me. I think back to that version of me that figured out how to transmute self-doubt into self-confidence and wonder if he'd be proud of the mess I've become. The person who struggles to make eye contact with their own reflection, the one who craves acceptance but still keeps the world at an arm's length. Every time I empty another bottle of whiskey into my glass, I see him shaking his head, because when his demons came, he'd face them one-on-one and leave them tapping in submission. It's true that I figured out something about myself that even he couldn't piece together. But is that enough? Am I enough? Will I ever learn how to turn water into wine, lead into gold? Thank you.
Cyrus, I feel like I know you, and I've really only conversed with you on social media, and I love hearing your book read out loud. I mean, I've read it, but hearing you say it is really, really wonderful experience. Thank you for that. So who do we have next? I think we have Ms. Nikita Gill.
I need a stiff drink. I am so tall. Why am I so
Me
tall?
too, girl.
Tall people problems.
That's right.
I'm going to start this by saying, first of all, I'm not used to reading out in front of people, especially so many people, so please be kind. So I'm going to start by reading Miracle. It took 3.8 billion years of triumphant evolution, remarkable collision, an unbelievable confluence made by sheer will and influence of this infinite universe and all of the stars to get you here. I hope you never doubt again that even when you are in pain, that you are a miracle, that every part of you is incredible. I should have marked my pages like these guys. Right, page 24. Now I'll start with sorcery. So, every day, I magic myself alive again from the near-death experience of trauma. I swallow my heart back from the lump it has become in my throat. I taste my own memories without the flavor of blood, but as poetry. I learn how to whisper my name without it sounding like a curse. I murmur spells to parts of me others have found too dangerous to love. And after this morning ritual, I finally smile at the woman in my mirror. Tell me again how healing is not a magical thing. Tell me again how I am not made of sorcery. Next one's called With Love from Midnight. So, when the day's mistakes are too much to bear, when everything feels like devastation beyond repair, remind yourself how mystical it is that every day the clock's set to 00.00. The reason they say midnight is the witching hour is because a new day rises from the ashes of the old. Embers breathe new life to its fire, giving us a chance to mend, a chance to restore all that is broken and what you thought was lost. Right. Next one's called Witch. Everyone must look at Amanda. We are the blood of the witches you thought were dead. We carry witchcraft in our bones, whilst the magic still sings inside our heads. When the witch hunters imprisoned our ancestors, when they tried to burn the magic away, someone should have warned them that the magic cannot be tamed, because you cannot burn away what has always been a flame. I'm going to end this with a poem from my first book because I always like to pay a bit of an homage to Carl Sagan. This one's called 93% Stardust. We have calcium in our bones, iron in our veins, carbon in our souls, and nitrogen in our brains. 93% stardust with souls made of flames. We are all just stars that have people names.
So this poor person just traveled how many hours? 2 days, okay. So that's like 30, how many hours is, no, a lot of hours, and she just got off a plane, and what a wonderful job you did. Thank you. Yeah. Just so you know, I started reading her book. I made the mistake of starting to read her book with a glass of wine. And the more wine I drank, I was like, yeah, girl, you go, kind of thing. And yeah, I finished it sober, though, don't worry. So, next, we have Amanda Lovelace.
Hi. I will be reading from my newest poetry collection called The Witch Doesn't Burn in This One. Thank you. I didn't do anything yet. Prophecy 1. I will not survive this winter. The boys with fistfuls of matchsticks are pounding at my cottage door. While witches may be flammable, the match boys cannot take the heart shape my lover's lips take when she whispers my name through the dark. The match boys cannot take the mother-to-daughter tales that will slide off the angry tongues of my descendants for centuries to come. The match boys cannot take the wronged woman's wrath of Artemis, goddess of hunting, the ones who come for women like me with hate-filled eyes. I may not survive the match boys, but my bitch fire will survive them all. Prophecy 2. What happens when you throw your match, but the pastor-prayed witch simply refuses to catch? What happens when you throw your stone, but the adultery-accused wife simply refuses to bleed? What happens when you throw your fist again, but your truth-talking girlfriend simply refuses to bruise? Over the span of centuries, animals evolved to survive their surroundings. So what happens when women finally learn to throw back? This. This is an overdue love letter to each and every woman who walked these fields before me and made the path soft enough for me to walk through to get to the side they could never reach. For that, I owe you so much, but I owe some things to myself too. The only time I know what being safe feels like is when I'm in a room overflowing with light and the laughter of women that fills the space floor to ceiling with lavender, and a door with a lock no man can ever break. Safety has never been our privilege. We spend lifetimes combing our way through scarce clover fields, hoping, praying, finger, eye, toe, and leg crossing, that we're not the 1 out of 6 who come up empty-handed. And we are never able to forgive ourselves for being the ones to pluck that green amethyst hope right before her fingers sweep the thin air. Safety and luck hold hands with each other. They can hand us folded dresses. They can gift us virgin wings. They can force on us their names. They can lock us in small rooms. They can thieve our words. They can attempt to take our choices too. But the one thing they can never steal, this fierce determination, what June taught me. January 21st, 2017. Remember the date. It was the day when more than 3.3 million women took the flames that have licked at their hard and soft skin for centuries and threw barrels of it at the old house constructed with packs of white matchsticks, the women's marches. In response, the Match Boys locked all the windows and all the doors to silence us, which only meant we had to scream louder. Oh, how the sky fell and fell for days afterward. Some believe they were the tears of the ancestors who had to watch, but couldn't stop this from happening. The women's marches too. Thank you.
Amanda, I made the mistake of reading your book after having a couple cups of coffee. And man, I was fired up. I ended up meeting with a girlfriend after reading it, and I was like, you have got to read this. And she's like, okay, I'll read it. And I have not gotten it back, unfortunately. There is a very well-read, tattered copy of The Princess Saves Herself in this one out on the west coast of Canada somewhere. You are a warrior of force. Thank you for sharing your work. And last, but certainly not least, is Iain S. Thomas.
I'm so excited to find out what Michelle was drinking when she read my book. I had a smoothie and it was amazing. Everyone else just reads their poetry. I'm really bad at that, sorry. This is from a book called How to Be Happy, which is very ironically not a very happy book at all. This is called We Will Never Leave Earth. We will never leave Earth. Battlestar Galactica is a lie. Star Trek is a lie. Alien is a lie. We will never leave Earth. We will never leave Earth because we will spend the time we have left and the one chance we have to leave Earth bickering over who did what to who. We will never leave Earth because instead of building spaceships, we decided to build walls and razor wires and prisons and bombs instead. We will never leave Earth because we aren't building space elevators and warp drives and new kinds of spacesuits and lasers, just in case we ever meet anyone as mean and petty as ourselves out there. We will never leave Earth because we're too busy building tanks to fight over the last barrels of oil and planes to drop the bombs we made on the people who disagree with us over the specifics of the story about where we all come from. We will never leave Earth, even though all our stories agree that heaven is above us. We will never leave Earth, even though Stephen Hawking says we've only got 200 years left. The last 2,000 don't give us much hope. We will never leave Earth because so many of us have agreed that passing laws about what someone else does with their genitals is more important than leaving Earth. We will never leave Earth, and we will sink and drown on this ship while we fight over the deck chairs. We will never leave Earth. The Last Starfighter is a lie. Babylon 5 is a lie. Star Wars is a lie. N.M. Banks is a lie. We will never leave Earth. We will never leave Earth, and we will never be anything more than a strange thought the universe had, a moment in which it went, wouldn't that be crazy? We will never leave Earth because the world will erupt in fire and ice while we're still debating whether or not fire or ice actually exist. We will still be arguing over whether we're burning or freezing to death when we die. We will never leave Earth, and the few robots we've sent out in our place will be our only fingerprints on the firmament, the only proof that a grabbing, desperate hand shot out of our coffin before it sunk beneath the soil. We will never leave Earth and meet Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius or Pisces. We will never touch Gemini's face and hear her say, "You look just like me. You look just like me." We will never leave Earth because we're too busy arguing over who you're allowed to love to bother actually doing the work of love, of leaving the Earth. We will never leave the Earth because we're obsessed with the soil we were born on. And we never realize that all the dirt that we stand on and all the dirt we're made of isn't dirt. It's stardust. Our dirt is their dirt, and we will never ask their dirt for help, so we will never leave Earth. Carl Sagan is a lie. Douglas Adams is a lie. Guardians of the Galaxy is a lie. Space Quest is a lie. We will never leave Earth, except as dust and ashes and minerals return to the sender, to be light burning in someone else's stars. Thank you. This is from the same book. This is called Shoulder, Shoulder, Slow, Slow. I had this dream that we somehow evolved without vocal cords, and the only way we could talk to each other was by touching our own or each other's skin. And the entire books were written entirely in hugs and hand-holding and letting go of each other. And we'd hold and touch and let go of each other in all these different ways to say all these different things. And when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, he just put his hand over his heart and held it there with his other hand. And it said everything to everyone at home. And the news presenter did the same, and so did everyone else. And there are museums you can go to in my dream where they have a set of mechanical hands, and you put them against your heart, and you can hear his exact words as he said them. And when people got married, everyone just held each other's hands in a circle and cried. And all the funerals in my dream looked exactly the same. And the people with the lightest finger spoke so softly. And fishermen and workers had low, gravelly voices. And I dreamed this dream for so long, I learned how to speak entirely in touch. And I write poetry on my wife's back every evening before she sleeps. And her skin and her nerve endings are a kind of paper that only remembers the ink written on it for a moment. And while it loses something in my terrible translation, my favorite work goes shoulder, shoulder, slow, slow, neck, arm, back, curve, slow, slow. Shoulder, shoulder, slow, slow, neck, arm, back, curve, slow, slow. And it's so much more eloquent than anything I've ever said, and so much more beautiful than anything I have ever written with words. Thank you. Just checking Twitter. No, this is from a book that's coming out next year called Every Word You Cannot Say, which is one long poem over about, I think, 180 pages. So I'm just going to read one or two parts of it very quickly. Listen, you are part of a beautiful story, but chapter 1 is not your first memory. The first word in the story was written a long time ago, and you are only in the story for just a few short pages. But in these pages, you get to decide how the story goes. Over time, you will play every character in the story. You will love and be loved. You will hate and be hated. You will be cruel and you will be kind. You will start young. And if you are lucky, you will be old when it ends. Everyone you meet along the way is just someone at a different point in their story. So be patient and kind. But don't let anyone tell you how your story should go. Only you know how your story goes. When the pages are over, don't be sad or angry. The wind doesn't stop being the wind when it stops blowing. A wave doesn't stop being a wave when it crashes against the shore. A story does not stop being a story when you turn the page. What have you lost between this page and this one? Every single life you touch moves the story forward. And so if you're lucky, your story becomes part of many stories. But life is not special because of what happens after it's over. Life is special because life is special. Your story is special. And whether you know it or not, you're adding new words to it every single day. If things are good, they will change. If things are bad, they will change, because change is the nature of every story. So what words will you add to it today? Thank you. This is later in the same book. You have every right to ask, and your sadness, where is your sadness? Here. You cannot say why you cannot forget their feeling of their skin against yours. Here, 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 and point to the center of yourself, and tap your sternum, and touch your forehead, and touch your tongue. You cannot say that you are sorry they left or that you left them. You cannot walk up to strangers in the street and say, here is where it hurts, and point to the center of yourself, and tap your sternum, and touch your forehead, and touch your tongue. You cannot tell them this is what it feels like a pebble in a shoe you're not wearing. You cannot say it is the absence of them and the presence of them and the difference between these two things that hurts the most. Here, here, here. Thank you. Well, I'll do one more. Cool. So I'll actually read something from I Wrote This For You. This is called The Light That Shines When Things End. I hope that in the future they invent a small golden light that follows you everywhere, and when something is about to end, it shines brightly, so you know it's about to end. And if you're never going to see someone again, it'll shine brightly, and both of you can be polite and say, it was nice to have you in my life while I did. Good luck with everything that happens after now. And maybe if you're never going to eat at the same restaurant again, it'll shine and you can order everything off the menu you've never tried. Maybe if someone's about to buy your car, the light will shine and you can take it for one last spin. Maybe if you're with a group of friends who'll never be together again, all your lights will shine at the same time and you'll know. And then you can hold each other and whisper, this was so good. Oh my God, this was so good. Thank you.
You did that on purpose, Iain. He knows that one makes me cry. And honestly, I can't remember what I was drinking, but it was probably a juice box because you started writing so long ago. Hence the reason many of the people on this panel call you Dad. Is that not right?
I don't call you Dad.
I am teasing you, but I have known you the longest, and so maybe I feel like I have some sort of license to be able to do that. I hope that you know how much you mean to me and to many people in the world. And I'll get all broken up, so I'll stop there. Nicholas is looking at me weird.
Q&A time? Or do you think that's appropriate right now?
Yeah.
All right, let's open it up to questions. Does anyone have a question? I do. What's next for all of you? What's the next thing? I know some of you read sneak peeks of your next book, collection, poem, singular poem. Could you expound upon what you're working on, just very briefly?
As we have so much time, I will read the entire book here now. No. So that's coming out next year. That's called Every Word You Cannot Say, and that's effectively about the fact that I think poetry is a kind of honesty where you can actually say the things that you feel, and in society on a kind of daily basis, you just don't. You have to be polite to people. You have to kind of just play by the rules of the game that we've invented for some God knows what reason. So that's insane. And I'm working with Mahatma Gandhi's granddaughter on a book, which is a crazy thing. She's 78. She's incredible, and yeah, that's kind of just in the very beginning phases, though. So that's cool. And then other weird and wonderful random things.
I don't think I can top that one. I'm currently working on my second collection. It's taken a while, but that's what I'm doing.
I'm also working on my second collection. Like I said, I read a poem from it. I haven't officially announced it yet, so like, keep this between us. But yeah, it's called Dropkick Masquerade. It's where Dropkick Romance is kind of about my relationships with other people. Dropkick Masquerade's more of my relationship with myself and like the world around me, and how like society tries to fit us into a box, whether we want to be in that box or not. Yeah, that's about the gist of it.
So I've been working on quite a few things. The next thing I'll be coming out with is called To Make Monsters Out of Girls. I think you're a little biased. That comes out September 18th. It's part of a new poetry series that I'm doing called Things That Haunt. It is a duology, a 2-book series, and it's basically a walk through my memories of certain relationships. Monsters is about a romantic relationship, an abusive one. And then the second one is going to be about my mom. I touched upon her a little bit in Princess, and I will be delving a little deeper in the second one.
I haven't really announced anything. I'm still kicking around a couple of ideas, working on some new poetry. That's it.
Trista will publish anything you write.
Okay.
Currently trying to work on being a fully functional adult, but along with that, so I actually was supposed to make the announcement today, but I've written a book of fairy tales, rewritten fairy tales, and I've kind of rewritten them from the perspectives of a lot of villains in fairy tales, so that's been fun. Yeah, Rumpelstiltskin wasn't such a bad guy. I know the baby thing was bad, but other than that... and then I have another book coming out this year as well, which is a continuation from my first book, Your Soul is a River. So this one's called Your Heart is the Sea. But yeah, 2 things amongst all the other things, all the other demons that live in my head. But, yeah.
Well, I don't write, I just publish. I live vicariously through those that can, which, as you can tell, I'm huge fans of all the people on this panel. This is an advanced reading copy of the next book that I'll be publishing, or one of the next books. It is a short story collection and poetry. So many of the people on this panel contributed to this collection. They each wrote a poem, and then their randomly chosen counterpart wrote a short story based on the concept that was presented to them in that poem. So it's pretty cool. There's art. There are, best-selling poets. There are yet to be famous poets. There's Canadians like me. There's Brits. There's South Africans. There's Americans. It's a really neat thing. And Nicholas is going to help us do a draw for. I've got 5 ARCs to give away. They're highly coveted, so don't share them with anyone.
Thank you all for doing this poetry reading with us. Let's give them a round of applause.